Okay, we're working on our Module 5 review, the study guide. This is what it looks like. Even if you don't have this exact study guide, this is a good review for you. You can just use what's here. I'm going to review a couple things before we get started. We're struggling with adding and subtracting and multiplying integers. If I have -3 plus 7, I have 3 negatives and 7 positives. 3 negatives and 7 positives looks like this. These 3 negatives and these 3 positives cancel each other out, and I have 4 positives remaining. So when I look at this, I say I have more positives than negatives. How many more positives? I have 4 more positives. Now if you have something like this, again, we can circle each term, and what this means is I have 5 negatives and 9 negatives, and I'm going to put them all together. Well, if I put all these together, I have 5 negatives and 9 negatives. What you see here is a whole bunch of negatives. There's no positives here to cancel these negatives out. So this is basically a whole bunch of negatives saying, wow, 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 where are all the positives that were supposed to come to this party? Well, how many negatives is that? Altogether, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, that's 14 negatives. Now, if I have something like this, -6 minus a -5, when you subtract a negative, remember when we talked about in class, if I take negatives away from you, it's the exact same effect as if I were to add positives to you. If I take negatives out of your life becomes more positive. Well, another way I can make your life more positive is just to give you positives. The exact same thing. So now this leaves me with a -6, and this is plus +5. Well, I'm not going to write +5. I'm just going to say +5 because we know that 5 is positive. Now I have 6 negatives and I have 5 positives. 6 negatives and 5 positives. These 5 positives and these 5 negatives cancel each other out, and I have 1 extra negative left over. Okay, now let's start with number 1. A line with a slope of 1/2 passes through the point 10, 4. What's the equation of the line? Well, I know that the equation of a line looks like this. And if I have my m value and my b value, I can write the equation for a specific line. Well, I have an m here, but I don't have a b value. But my m is 1/2. But I don't have a b, but I have an x and a y here. I have 10, 4, and in an ordered pair, this is always my x value and my y value. So I'm going to take this x and plug it in here, and this y and plug it in here, because this point is a solution to the equation that I'm going to write. And I know it's a solution to the equation because this point is going to be on the line, and for it to be on the line, it has to satisfy the equation. So for x, I'm going to put a 10. And for y, I'm going to put a 4. So 4y equals, mx means m times x. So if my m is 1/2 and my x is 10, I'm going to multiply those together. I still don't know what b is, but the sweet thing about this equation is b is my only variable, and it's really easy to solve an equation that only has one variable. So I'm going to put a line here to remind myself that there's a balance. This is all equal to 4. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So my goal is to get b alone. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this mess. Well, before I get rid of this mess, I can simplify that by multiplying 1/2 and 10 together. And the way you do that is you say 1/2 times 10, and I'm going to turn 10 into a fraction. Since 1/2 is a fraction, this is still 10. I'm going to multiply straight across and simplify. Well, 10 can be factored as 2 times 5, and 2 can be factored as 2 times 1. And if you cancel out those 2's, you're left with 5 over 1. So half of 10 is 5. So this right here equals 5 plus b. And then over here I still have my 4. So this 5 replaced my m times my x. I just simplified it. Now if I want to get b alone, I have to get rid of this 5. Well, this is 5 positives. If I put 5 negatives here, those will cancel out, but I have to put 5 negatives on the other side to maintain the balance in my equation. So now I'm combining all this right here. So these cancel out. I'm left with just b. I just isolated my variable. This is tricky. Check it out. You have 4 positives and 5 negatives. You have 4 positives and 5 negatives. These cancel out, and you're left with -1. There's your b value. B is -1. M we already know is a half because we were told that. M is a half. And now we know b is -1, so now we can write the equation. Y equals m is 1/2 x plus b. I can put plus, my y-intercept is -1. Y equals, there's my slope, there's my x, plus b, which is -1. If you want to, this can also be written in, if you're adding -1, it's the same thing as just subtracting 1. Now, I'm going to graph the line with a slope of 1/2 that passes through the point 10, 4. So what I'm going to do is graph the point 10, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 on the x-axis and 4 on the y-axis. There's the point 10, 4. Now my slope is 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and graph my slope of 1/2. So I'm going to go rise 1, run 2, rise 1, run 2. But I actually want to know what my y-intercept is, so I need this graph to go the other way. So I can go -1 and -2, and that still equals +1/2, -1, -2, -1, -2, -1, -2, -1, -2, -1, -2. That gives me clear over to the y-axis, and check it out. This is -1, isn't it? So that's my y-intercept. So my slope is 1/2 and my y-intercept is -1. That matches what I found, and then I graphed it and they all agree. This graph matches this equation, and this graph contains this point and a slope of 1/2. So everybody's happy, and I'm sure that's the right answer because I checked it. Okay, number 2, give the slope and y-intercept of the table. Okay, well, slope, I can do this. So if I do the change, okay, this is going to go from -25, here's 0, here's 25, and here's 50 on a number line. Okay, so the change here, I'm going to go from -25 to 0. So I'm going to go from here to here. Well, how much of a change is that? To get from -25 to 0, I would have to take 25 steps to get from -25 to 0, and I'm going to the right, so the change is 25. Now how about from 0 to 25? If I go from 0 to 25, I'm actually going 25 times, so that's also 25, and I'm going to the right. What about 25 to 50? Well, that's also 25 spaces to the right, so that's a change of 25. These are my change in my x values. This change is 25, this change is 25, and this change is 25. Now, let's look at the change in my y values, which are down here. I'm going to do a little bit different number line. I'm going to start at -5, and I'm going to go to 0, then I'm going to go to 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. All right, so if I go from -5 to +5, that means I'm going to start here and I'm going to end here. How many spaces did I have to move? Well, to get from -5 to 0, that's 5 spaces. And to get from 0 to +5, that's